Wednesday, October 19, a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the Kerr County Commissioners Court is now in session for a budget workshop. And we'll start with James Robles. I see you've passed out this is the current latest iteration of the budget, and we put in all the tweaks from the prior.
That's correct. The notable changes we made is we added 10,000 to the salary study survey.
Right.
We had hoped that we would begin part of that project in the current fiscal year, so we had budgeted a lesser portion to pay for next year. That doesn't appear to be the case, so we put the entire portion in next year. Also, if you look at our...
So what is that total amount then?
50,000.
50,000, okay.
If you look at the debt service, which is about midway through the page, there's a line for the 2020 tax note. We had updated that with new numbers from our bond counsel and financial advisor. We had amortized that over a 7-year period, and the principal and interest payments for next year would total $293,000.
And that is following the CIP's recommendation on the various properties, and we have them all available to be financed if whatever we do or don't do would be financed with these tax notes.
If necessary.
Okay.
What's the total amount of that?
2.5.
Another change is from the road and bridge and flood control. We have moved 75,000 from road and bridge for 3 of their projects: the Sutherland road drainage, Fall Branch bridge project, and Mill Creek ditch stabilization. We feel those qualify to be paid under the flood control fund, so I'll take some of the burden out of road and bridge and use our dedicated funds.
Right. Well, James, when we started this thing back in the spring, before COVID, I was pretty committed to trying to aggressively balance this budget. And here we are, almost to the finish line. And it looks like to me that we still have a technical deficit budget.
That's correct. Across all funds, budgeted deficit is $944,380. That is by design. If you look at the very bottom right side of the page, you'll see 4 projects listed. The debt service payment, which is the real property buildings, the shared vehicles, the road construction, and the road and bridge capital outlay. Those projects total $1.137 million. We are choosing to pay for those out of fund balance instead of financing or increasing the tax rate to cover that.
In other words, we're paying those with cash.
We are paying those with cash. And that brings us to the methodology we use. The board had requested that we go with the no new revenue tax rate. So regardless of your appraised values, we will find back into a tax rate that the taxpayers will pay the same amount of taxes regardless of the increase of their assessed values.
Say that again real loud.
Taxpayers, regardless of the increase in their assessed values, will have the same tax bill as they did in the current year.
Fantastic.
Now the footnote, there are some technical abnormalities, anomalies that we have to deal with, but they're things that we have no control over. But by and large, the rank and file taxpayer will pay the same taxes next year as they paid this year.
That's correct.
And so we're backing our tax rate down to that point.
That's correct.
And I went back, I talked to you and Tanya about this. We went back and checked it. This is probably the first time in at least a decade that taxes have not gone up just by virtue of appraised values. And so a lot of people accuse us of not listening to the taxpayers, but we have diligently listened to taxpayers this budget season. And I will remind you that we've had public hearings on volunteer fire departments, veteran services, the appraisal district, 2 on Mask, 2 on Johnson Creek, 7. In the last 6 months, we have had 7 major public hearings. We are listening to the taxpayers. And on these appraisals, it was beyond our control, but we're doing what we can to ameliorate the effect of that and keep the taxes where they are And with regard to this no new revenue tax rate, I strongly support that, mainly because we don't know where we are with the new legislation we picked up last year, the 3.5% revenue cap. If we back the tax rate down anymore, we could really dig a hole for ourselves in the future. And being able to overcome the higher appraisals that came out this year by taking that tax rate and backing it down so that there is no new revenue. We're not benefiting from what the appraisal district did. We're just trying to keep the doors open and perform county functions.
I think it's a county-wide look. Individuals may pay more or may not because on whatever their individual taxes is. So it's not that everyone's taxes are going to be the same.
Those are the anomalies I'm talking about. There's some technical anomalies we can't do anything about.
Right.
James, so what is the general fund tax rate then associated with what you just passed out?
Well, that's Mr. Reeves.
Okay, but it's, all right, we'll let him talk about that.
We're fluid. You can come on up, Bob.
Okay,
We're all one big family. Give us the verdict.
If I understood correctly, we were going with the no new revenue rate of .4757 combined road and bridge, or lateral road is the official term, and debt service and M&O. So from that .4757, .0298 would be your lateral road levy, with the remainder of that being for debt service and M&O.
Now, I know you got that to 4 decimal points out there, but for the layperson, we're basically talking about right at 4 cents reduction on the tax rate this year.
Reduction
from 51 and a half.
from the tax rates, if you compare tax rates. I don't compare tax rates.
Well, but we do.
We do.
We understand you don't, because you have a special way you got to do all of this. But our tax rate was at 51.5 cents per $100 valuation, and we're backing it down to 47.57
That is correct.
per 100.
And that's 4757 is all, what is it for the general fund then?
Michelle,
For
you
the
have the
general
calculator.
fund, yeah, we're looking at .3869 or .3870. I've got a little bit of rounding. but it's-
3870 for maintenance and operations and .0589 for debt service. That's how you calculate it.
Okay. All right.
So, I guess .4459 would be the Kerr County portion of the levy. And lateral roads would be .0298.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
Okay, with all that being said, if you look at the right column, the fund balance percentage, for the total general funds, we have 32.46%, which is almost 4 months of operating expenditures. And given the economic climate, global pandemic, and restrictions from Senate Bill 2, the property tax cap, it's prudent to have a healthy fund balance, and that's 1 month over the minimum recommended by the Texas Association of Counties.
And let me footnote that one of the reasons that we were able to have what I call a pleasant surprise was we ended up with more money in our bank account than we thought we were going to end up with. Part of that's due to some of the COVID savings, the monies that we budgeted that we didn't spend. And some of it is due to a lot of belt tightening here at the courthouse. Our elected officials and department heads and employees have really tightened belts. But another thing that has happened that I want the public to understand is we've had a pleasant surprise with our sales tax revenues. The request for people to buy at home has worked. And our sales tax actually went up higher than what we anticipated. So we've benefited from a little bit more income than we anticipated from sales tax. We've benefited from money not being spent because of the COVID crisis. And it's resulted in us being able to pay for these major capital expenditures right out of the fund balance without having to raise taxes or finance. All of these capital expenditures that you see under these major ones could have been financed. And of course, when you do that, you can reduce your payments in your current budget year, but you spread those payments out over a 2, 3, 4-year period, whatever it may be. And so without having to raise taxes and without having to finance, we were able to accommodate all of our major capital expenditures this year with our pleasant surprise that we ended up with more money in the bank account, and extend our reserve funds from 25% for 3 months up to 33%, almost 33%, 32.5, which is essentially 4 months worth of funds that we have to run the county at this point in reserve.
Judge, I think everything you said is perfect. I came at it a little different way, came to the same answer. I looked at the appraised value increasing, okay, and I looked at a fairly high fund balance. And so I ran some numbers. I talked to James this morning, and I thought, well, if we can reduce the tax rate, if ballpark, and Bob, don't jump on me for this, but ballpark appraised values went up about a little bit less than 11%. So I thought if we could reduce the tax rate by that amount and keep the taxpayer at about the same amount of money they have to pay in taxes, that would be good. So I ran some numbers on that, and that would have left a fund balance, had been a tax rate of somewhere in the neighborhood of 31%, a little bit over that. I mean, not a fund balance of 31%. So what this does is, I agree with it 100%, okay? I just came at it from let's reduce the tax rate because the appraised values went up, but still leave more than the 25% in there. And you left a significant amount for all the reasons you're saying,
Sure.
which is a smart thing to do, so.
More than one way to skin a cat, in other words.
Well, it's looking at it similar, but it
Yeah.
came down to approximately the same answer, so I support this 100%.
Been the goal all along to reduce the tax rate, and, you know, we've heard all the stuff about appraisals and everything else, and, you know, this was a goal to do this.
Well,
So,
I think, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I said, I think the thing to tell the taxpayers too is we reduce the tax rate from 51.5 to 47.6, okay? Which is a 10%, that's a 10% reduction in the tax rate. That's a big, you're talking about not having been done in years. I don't know that we've ever, since I've been here, reduced tax rate.
The important thing to point out is we have no control over the appraisals and stuff.
No,
This
but
is the only thing we do have control over.
But reducing the tax rate by 10% is a big deal.
Sure.
Well, it's been a rough 6 months, any way you slice it, and it's been a lot of sacrifice, and it's been very difficult. And we appreciate the efforts on the part of our employees. This is a tough year. I think this is kind of, I call it the pleasant surprise. It's the silver lining to all the crud that we've had to deal with the last 6 months. But the truth of the matter is that we've, and maybe I would like to take a little credit that I started off trying to be very aggressive with trying to balance the budget. And I think that carried over as we got into the crisis and how we managed it. And the truth of the matter is, I look back on it, we've managed it better than we thought we were. And so I congratulate all the county employees and the court. We've done this together, and we're at a point where we're positioned to be able to face the unknown for this next year, this next fiscal year, knowing that we're solvent. Our nest egg is a little bit bigger than it was, and the good news is that the individual sacrifices that our employees have had to make with the no raises and no new hires and no COLA, that was my campaign starting this budget process, is we do have the money already set aside and budgeted for the salary study. And we meant to have it this year, but the COVID derailed us on that. And so we are positioned to be able to recover and try to get back to normal as soon as normal circumstances permit. And so I'm excited that we've got the money already set aside for the salary study, and we already have starting to make appointments to try to complete that.
I think there's one other point to make too, is the fund balance reserve is above the 25%, but next year and the following years, we've got a limit by the state legislature of 3.5% increase. So if we have a major issue in the next year or two, or whatever it is, the recovery, the way to pull us, to get out of that ditch, out of that hole, is going to be really, really hard. So this gives us a little bit of capability there too, which I think is important.
Sure.
Well, we started this process thinking we were going to be worse off than we are. And it's always good when you end up at the end of a budget year, a budget process, and you see that we've done better than we thought we would. And that's always good news.
Well, this is only my second one, but I feel a heck of a lot better about this one than I did the last one.
Yeah, but the last one ended up the same way as this one.
Well, you're right.
You're right.
Glad
Every
we're-
year, we have ended up doing much better for various reasons and lots of different reasons across the year. But we always end up with go in with a deficit budget and we come out without a deficit budget.
As a matter of fact,
That's true.
I've got the reserve balance, that's James Gifford. In 2014, reserve balance was 29%, 2015, 32%, 2016, 33%, 2017, 39%, last year almost 40%. So, but make your point.
But to reiterate Commissioner Gillett's point, the reason for this is we live in a conservative community, and we budget conservatively. And what happens is we budget what we think we absolutely have to perform our public functions, and we don't spend it all. And so money is returned at the end of every year. That's why we've been able to maintain this. And so it's just a habit of conservative budgeting and conservative spending and conservative living. These are the conservative values that we honor here in the community.
The only question I have, I don't want to go into the details of the tax anticipation note and what's in it and not in it and those amounts. I know there's one pretty small acquisition we talked about. If we decided, between now and when we adopt the final budget, take it out of the reserve as opposed to putting it into that tax anticipation note, we can still do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've worked very closely with the auditor and deputy auditor because of our fund balance position, because we have more money in the bank account than we anticipated. We're in a position to be able to do these things. We'll have Dusty Traylor and Tom Spurgeon here, I think, on Monday to talk about this. But the whole concept was to be able to have these tax notes as our safety net, because we can do some of these things with the available cash that we have on hand. But the whole purpose behind the tax notes is to be able to have enough money to be able to do the things that are moving us forward here in the county.
And in spite of that, in spite of the way we've come out, we've made every effort to get the very best deal possible on these properties. So it's not like, hey, we're fat with cash and we're going to pay, we're not paying full retail. We keep from it. Just want everybody to know that. It's important because you can't save over here and then blow it over there.
Right.
It's a mindset, what the judge is talking
Exactly.
about, that conservative mindset that goes across everything we do.
And we'll have more to report on that Monday at the Commissioners Court meeting. But as I say,
Good job.
it's been a tough one to land. It's been a tough period to go through all of this. I think we've done a great job so far. We need to put the finishing touches on it today, and I know we have some people that want to address us. And our agenda calls for, this has been the overview part of it. The next thing I'll call for is, are there any input for department budgets?
Judge, Commissioner, after reviewing my budget, and I went and spoke with James earlier, courts are going to start gearing up unless the pandemic kind of hopefully goes away or slows up or whatever it does. What that means is my office is going to be extremely busy, which means we will have court constantly, which means it could go all day long, in the evening, we have jury trials. And I would like to request, but I didn't request earlier because I didn't see any need for it, overtime money on my budget. And I'm looking about $10,000 because I have 10 people in my office and I can't expect the same people to stay in the courtroom constantly. We have to rotate it around, that way I have a buffer. And like the sheriff knows, when you gotta stay late, you just can't say time out, gotta go home, you gotta stay until it's over. So that's my request there. And also, I'm not sure if this was even addressed during the budget process or not, but I understand that we're tightening our budget. Everybody's tightened it up. I think these employees here at Kerr County have done amazingly well during this time with the COVID virus. Sheriff's office people have been working 24/7. My office has been doing the same. And I think that there needs to be some type of merit consideration for some of the employees. We did it last year. They worked even harder this year. So I think those funds need to be put into the budget and that needs to be considered for all these Kerr County employees. But that's my opinion, and I know my employees work hard and they're unable to get more money this year because the salary survey is not going to go through. So I'm just going to pray that nobody leaves my office when we do have this new indigent defense, because there's a possibility those employees will get paid more over there. So they're going to take employees from the courthouse here and move over there. So I think we need to try to find a way for those employees who've been working extremely hard to compensate them somehow. We were able to do it last year in a horrible budget year. We did it last year. Why can't we do it this year?
What was that, what did we have last year? 50,000, something like that in the,
We had 50,000 gross in our budget.
right.
And the committee gave out the 50,000 net, and we had to go back and make up the roll-ups is what we did.
Okay. So ballpark, I was just looking at what we had.
I mean, that's the least for all
Yeah.
these people here.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, and Commissioner Mosher, you made a comment about everybody getting stimulus. Not everybody got stimulus.
Mhm.
And in my office, everybody that did get stimulus paid their bills. And guess what? They owe Kerr County money, so guess where they were paying their bills at?
Mhm.
Here. So we were benefiting from the stimulus money. So, again, not everybody got it. Those that did, they left it here in Kerr County.
Good, good.
Thank you. Any other input from the department budgets?
Way on.
Sheriff?
Well, I'm talking to a couple of y'all about this, and I think it may have, maybe part of this could affect the overall budget part. Another part I may have to put on the agenda for Monday. I'd like to explain the way I feel and what I think should happen. Let me give you just a little bit of basics and then I'll get to the point. Number one, sheriff's office and jail, the law just can't close. And then they'll close our offices, and then they'll cut staff, rotate days or anything like that. Number two, we don't get to choose who we come in contact with. We don't get to choose who comes into that jail, who makes that phone call for law enforcement assistance, what rec calls we go to, what bodily fluids we get on us, and how we have to deal with these people. Okay? Number three, we don't get to choose whether or not we have it in our home. We have no idea whether there is COVID in that home, and some of them might know they have it. And we don't have a choice. You still have to go. Still have to do it. We don't get to choose who we have to execute search warrants on. We go in their homes and fight them. Several times a week, we're having to make mental health transports to San Antonio or Austin. We don't get to choose who rides in that car with us, who we're being exposed to, who those drivers are. We don't get to choose who the deputies have to serve civil papers on. or who they have to arrest on warrants, or when we have to take them to TDC to go through their entrance form. We don't get to dictate which calls we're going to respond to and which ones we're not. We don't get to control any of this stuff. And just in the last few weeks, I've had officers that have responded to wreck scenes, and before they could ever put on masks or protective equipment, found themselves trying to do CPR on somebody to save a life. Did it last week, and now we've been told that one of those people had COVID. We don't get those choices. We don't get to back off. We had a call here a while back, we had this PE with it, on a guy that's strung out on methamphetamine and vital. And we had to go hands on, fight with him, knowing he was COVID positive. And you get your choice. You know, the government helped us in a lot of ways. And a lot of counties are doing it. Collin County, Dallas County, Denton County, Navarro County. They're paying their emergency first responders, their jailers, and their deputies hazardous duty pay. It's available. This county's been given up to $1.4 million in the Kerr Act. It's totally reimbursable, and it can be totally controlled by this court. And so what I'm asking is the same thing Navarro County did. Navarro County's paying their sheriff's office employees $5 an hour hazardous duty pay on top of their regular pay. That $5 an hour goes until either the county judge and the court up there pulls the emergency declaration. If you pull it, it's canceled. There's no more $5 an hour. Emergency's over. Or until the auditor says we're running low in that CARES Act fund. Then it's over. And it only starts on the day the court passes the order to start. It's not retroactive. And I hadn't asked for it before when I wasn't sure we could.
Why?
Because I wasn't sure we could. Okay. And I can't go in and ask for a lot of that stuff. But now I found out it is available in that fund. I wasn't asking the county to pay more. But you know, the way it's gone, and what I've seen happen is the stress levels with my employees is just getting where we got to do something. The exposure, the stress, I had the one during the pursuit that we fought just about every night. Until 2 days ago, we didn't know whether he was positive or not. We didn't have a choice.
Well, and to help the sheriff answer that, the consultant that we retained, the Whit O'Brien firm, we're learning what we can and can't get reimbursed for. And this is one of the things that we can.
Well, what kind of money's in that fund?
We spent about $160,000 so far.
And our first is,
Is this coming out of the overall fund? Or
The $1.4 million grant.
it's coming out of that?
Yes.
and they've already sent us, what, 290 of that or so?
Yes.
So that's about half of the cash that they've already sent us. And we can use that cash to help.
So it won't cost, and I'm kind of one of those like partying now, the federal government says it's free money, we all pay for it sooner or later. But it will not affect our budget locally to do it. And I think it's something for law enforcement and the jail. Okay, for the personnel that I have that don't get any choices. Even the clerks in the jail, they don't have a choice. But they go back and deal with those inmates, help them get paperwork, help them get them in the court system. We don't get choices. And I think it's time that we look at it, and I would appreciate looking at what these other counties have done. And I think it's a way, since we know that the COVID and you're trying to do budget and all that kind of stuff, but it's mainly because of this COVID has put so much stress on my department. I've had employees that had to get their spouses tested because they weren't sure. And that scares the spouses, it scares the kids, it scares, and the stress level is just unreal.
Well, this won't change that.
No, we know that.
It won't change that. But it let them know that this county is trying everything we can do to take care of it.
Slap on the back.
The fund we already had, and I appreciate that, the fund that we were already getting money from, we just now discovered it'll cover this too.
It will cover everything.
Okay. Well,
I'm asking that you approve either, and I know this is a workshop, so I probably need to go on to the agenda. But I'm asking that you seriously consider, and I'll put it on the agenda for Monday, to approve $5 an hour pay for all sheriff's officers and jail employees until, from the day y'all pass it, Monday, I will, until the day that this court withdraws the emergency declaration, or the auditor says those funds are coming to a point where she doesn't recommend it be done.
And just a little bit of catch up on that, you would need to pass a policy on hazard pay in order to fully start paying that and then pass it. So we have asked with Orion for if they have like a standard hazard pay policy to start this online.
Have we ever had something like that?
No.
No.
Is it limited to what county departments? Because there's a lot of departments.
No.
That would be y'all's decision.
It gets down to the definition of what's hazardous duty.
Yeah.
Some have said that road bridge people are, they may not get quite what first responders get. Other ones have said, well, you know, and I hate using this term because I got seen one time during one of our ice storms, and I said non-essential people could stay home. Okay. I heard about a lot of people that said, oh, so you consider us non-essential. I don't consider any of my employees non-essential. But, I mean, some agencies have said that the non-essential are the ones that don't have to do it, okay, or that have other choices, you know. No, if you can't work from home, they give them some policies over that. But what I'm saying is, you know, and I'm not knocking any department in this county, and I don't want to do department heads yet, but there are some that have been able to close, or been able to rotate, or, you know, are closed now and haven't taken it.
But most of the other departments, they don't get body fluids on. We understand
They
that.
aren't given CPR, they aren't given body, they're not in fights, they're not in, you know, a transport car for 8 hours that they don't have a choice. Okay? And they're not going into homes that they have no idea.
So I have another question for you, Sheriff. What are you spending now a month on the PPP and the other stuff that's coming out of this fund?
A lot of our stuff we're getting on the PPE is coming from the
Or
emergency
PPE,
management.
I should say.
PPE is coming from the emergency management team, okay? But so far, in my office, counting the jail and the sheriff's office, and I looked at it this morning, it's right at about $15,000.
A month?
No, start to now.
That's your total.
That's our total.
It's
So
$2,000,
and
$2,500
some of
a
that
month.
is stuff we had to, you know, some of it got expensive. One's computers so we could do Zoom from the jail to the courthouse. One was a power washer type system that would go in power wash cells.
So some of it was a one-time expense, other of it's ongoing.
Right.
So that's from since March?
Every first started.
Yeah, March.
About March.
Yeah, into March probably.
So that's less than $5,000 a month. So it's more like, is that $1,500 a month, something like that? So with that being the case, you think that, what I'm really asking is, what are you spending a month, you think, on hand sanitizers and all the other stuff you have to do now, the throwaway masks? If it's not gonna be over $1,500 a month, then this money we're talking about could last us a while.
Well, let's talk about that money, Commissioner.
Okay.
Right now, that money has to be spent before the end of calendar year 2020. There's talk about extending it so that it will spill over into 2021. But if that money right now, if it's not spent by December 31, it gets returned to the federal government.
So we have about $700,000 of it left or more.
Oh, no, we have a lot more than that.
Yeah, we spent about 10%.
But this is a legitimate
I know it's
reimbursable
a
expense.
legitimate concern. Have you done the math on what that would look like? You have not.
I have not done that.
That's everybody, everywhere. That wouldn't include like the emergency operators and.
I think it would. Because unfortunate, in the way our building's set up, you know, emergency dispatch, we're trying to keep it light, but that's where all the officers' boxes go. The officers are constantly going in and out, and that's where, to be honest, I have some more high vulnerable people. I have some that work in there with special needs kids that, you know, definitely can't risk taking them home. I have some that work in there with other issues that put them
But
in
that's already in
high
place.
vulnerability.
This is not something new with the $5 an hour. This is already all in place. protecting them and protecting the people.
Trying to
that
do
own it.
everything we can, yes, it is in place. Now,
Basically, if you give everybody a $5 an hour raise
Right.
for the duration of whenever, it also means that everybody's gonna get a $5 an hour pay cut when that guy over there is in office.
Right. Because it gets cut, you know, that's the whole thing. It is a hazardous duty paid during the term of this, during the term that.
Well, really,
It
because-
lasts or until the auditor.
Till it runs out.
That's $10,000 a year.
But let me give a caveat here. We have to be careful because in visiting with the Widow Bryan people, the devil is in the detail on these things. And when we start talking about a hazardous pay policy, we're going to have to be able to convince the people that review our grant request that those people are truly in a hazardous position.
Right.
This is not willy-nilly that, okay, we're making everybody in the county hazard pay.
So really, we don't decide here.
No.
There are guidelines. we
No,
have to
we're
live
at
with.
risk. We pay the money,
Right.
and then we're going to get reimbursed if we qualify. And so if we're going to do it, I want to do it on things that are clear cut,
Black and
not
white.
close, black and white. And I have noticed that during the last 6 months with this COVID crisis that we've been going through, there's almost a pall, an emotional pall that hangs over people. We get tired of being cooped up. You get tired of not being able to talk to anybody. And there is more domestic violence, there is more road rage, there is more everything. And some of the recent incidents that the Sheriff's Department has had to deal with are just atrocious. And they're traumatic, and I'm sure we're going to start having some officers that are going to need to have some kind of help to deal with this. I mean, the little girl in the car accident that had the decapitation, I mean, my
If you
God.
look at what we had just in the last 2 months, and had a little girl drown while out of Kaya. And had a little kid crushed by a tractor, and that guy's trying to do CPR. And the little girl this last week that was decapitated, in the car wreck. And we had to deal with some other people in the same car. We had,
The little girl that died yesterday,
the little girl that died yesterday, because one of my off-duty jailers was underneath that truck holding her hand.
yes.
Okay. We had the 3 on the motorcycle, crash, and then another one of my jailers, off duty was with volunteer fire department, and I had to be with somebody that, may not show remorse when we get into cases like that, but, it's we've all been shocked. I don't know what's happened, but we've had more deaths, and this isn't counting, there was a SIDS death the other night, not counting those. It's not counting, the natural cause deaths that they're having to go to the houses and do all that kind of stuff. Just on accidents that shouldn't have happened, it's been 8 in the last month and a half. And it's just been horrendous on the staff. And there are some that are having to go through some counseling type stuff on it, because they're trying to help, because they have to deal with it. The one with the little girl, this last one. My dispatch supervisor was coming back from San Antonio and drove up on us before anybody got there. He was one of the ones that found that little girl. They got there. I mean, it's been horrendous. And I think it's time, because of all of these things that are going on, I think it's time we're trying, if we can use this money, it's not hurting the local budget, it's not hurting us, and I think it's time we're trying to do something for our emergency first responders. And hopefully, if y'all do it, I hope the city does it. I don't know if they are or not, but I hope they do.
Sure.
I hope England does it. Because these people are dealing with stuff that I have never seen in 40 years. Never thought. And I'll tell you that, I don't want it. My career is done, my salary's set, I don't want it. But I would like to see it go in our department. That is. Now, on the good news part, change course real quick. I have started accepting because we can separate them. I had kind of herd immunity type deal where I told y'all I put some stipulations in before I accepted more from Kendall County or anyone. We haven't been able to do that. And I have 32 out of county. We're billing out 50,000 a month as we speak. And I don't expect that to go down.
What are you doing to check them before you let them in?
They have to be in that agency's already custody. for at least 30 days is what we're trying to make sure, definitely past 14. When they come here, they have to all still be classified the same. They're all housed in the same housing unit. They don't mix for another 21 days, and then that's when we can separate them.
Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, they won't separate.
Okay.
And if we're able to do it right, because I can't say how much longer, I think we're probably, because it takes up a lot of shelf space being able to do that. And a lot of manpower. At that point, it is where I think we were looking at what we estimate for last year, 200 what? For the next year, 272,000 is what we were estimating for the next budget year. And I'm billing right now 50,000 a month. So if we do that, we're going to go over 600,000. We'll pick up the budget on that part. But I just appreciate any consideration we do to help these.
Well, I know we'll talk about this a lot more Monday if it's on the agenda, Rusty, but something I want to, one thing I want to say now, all of us who watch the national news and see what the law enforcement are having to put up with, I want people to know that's not the way it is here in Kerr County. There's never even an inkling of thought of defunding or
Well, we appreciate that.
treating them different.
And as we've seen and we've commented, the support we get from the citizens in this community is, I think, unmatched.
Sure.
But, on the other hand, you would be amazed at how many arrests we made where the first thing they're hollering is, Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna make sure they defund y'all. I mean, it's out there, it's a shame, but it's there, but those that count, we truly love their support.
Now, if you add to that what the emotional pall you're talking about over everybody, add that to it, where you feel like anytime you have to have your back against the wall at all times. You'd be a little on edge.
Absolutely.
It's making, what the scariest part for me as an administrator is making the first line officers second guess themselves, I'm afraid. And we're gonna get somebody hurt, that's second guess.
I agree.
That's the problem.
So we'll have guidelines to pursue on this. That's the main thing.
And they're going to have to be strictly tied to a COVID causation.
Right. That's key.
Yeah, agenda item, Jenny? Probably should just be broad enough to look at other departments if they qualify.
Well, the policy would apply to all county employees once we establish the
But with the agenda item, I don't want to be sheriff's department, it needs to be county policy.
Okay.
Well, that's what the auditor's telling us, that Widow Bryan said, look, we got to have a policy.
And then I think you can step, this amount to these, this amount, whatever the hazards are. I don't know.
I think it's whatever they pass.
Good.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Rusty, if some of those other counties have guidelines on different gradation of that, if you could get that, that'd be
I
helpful.
will definitely see if I can find an actual policy, I'm sure they do.
Okay.
Collin County, Dallas County,
Yeah,
Marion,
okay.
Denton, Donna, Glen Heights, Navarro, I mean, they're.
Good.
And that's just somewhere around here in Texas.
Navarro would be the one I'd be most interested in about here.
It's most comfortable to
Navarro's
us.
the closest, they're
Yeah.
50,000 population, they're the closest.
They're
Yeah.
comparable.
And their actual, what their commissioner court passed was $5 an hour for sheriff's office and road and bridge.
Okay. You could get that for us for next Monday. That'd be
I'll see
good.
if I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can, I don't care about Collins and Denton so much.
All those.
No, pretty honest.
The Attorney General does.
Yeah.
I think they had a few more cases of COVID than we had.
But Navarro is a good county to look at usually.
And for those of you at home that don't know Navarro County, that's Corsa County.
And I just want to follow up on Rusty. It is going through the list of, I don't know if the auditor's getting those questions, but as far as the clerk's listserv, that is going around. We're even exposed to the deputies and Kerrville Police that come to our office doing search warrants and various different things. So, and we also have to sign up the defendants take prints, what are not custody, so we have them coming from all over, Austin, San Antonio, we don't know where they've been.
Mhm.
And so we try to do everything possible to protect ourselves, but we're exposed to as
But you're at
well.
risk, right?
So, I mean, I really agree with Rusty, those law enforcement are on the front line, and they are taking the biggest hit, and nobody's even thought about them. So, I want to say.
And they don't get days off and they don't get to work remotely.
Because you are our first line of protection.
Thanks.
This is kind of an FYI, but on March 15th, TxDOT had started paying all of their employees $5 an hour more. I've lost 2 employees to TxDOT recently. As of 4 o'clock today, I will be 4 people short in the field, and I have 2 people that are out from surgeries in the field, so it'll be a total of 6 short for us. But TxDOT, their administrative staff, and even the gal that works in our local office, they've all been working from home, TxDOT staff. The field has rotated their schedules and everything. They're not working full 40-hour weeks. I haven't changed anything for everybody. We've all continued to work as normal. We take precautionaries in our office. We bought a spray gun that I think the county has purchased some additional units. So we've taken extra measures with our field staff. But I read an article about TxDOT on that, and I don't know how accurate this number is, but I know TxDOT is a very big organization in the state, and they had paid out $8 million in hazard pay, and they started it on March 15th. So, again, I agree with that our law enforcement definitely needs it, but like I said, I just kind of wanted to let you know that, and.
Well, what is your crew's exposure to the public? Why would that be hazardous?
Well, you do get people who will pull up and stop and want to know what we're doing. We get a lot of foot traffic coming in the office. Again, I think the law enforcement definitely, like I said, when I came up to the podium, mine was more than FYI to you, to let you know that Texas Department of Transportation went to a hazard pay on March 15th, and it was $5 an hour more. So they were receiving $800 extra a month. And I know that was happening because the first employee I lost to TxDOT, his brother still works at Road Bridge, and verified that was happening. So, like I said, mine was more than FYI, that very similar department, although, there's an article on it.
So you just
So,
afraid
yeah,
you're gonna lose more employees?
Well, yeah, a little bit on that, and also that I thought it was interesting that their office staff are working at home, and they got hazard pay, and they're working at home. And I have all of my office staff that shows up every day, like no virus is even here. And we continue to pound the pavement and to take calls. And so
It'd be interesting to see if that passes the guidelines for the federal funds.
I think one of the issues that Road and Bridge has that's a little bit different is they work in crews, and those crews are in very close proximity, and in some, a lot of those situations, masks are not real reasonable.
But I bet
And
that's
they're
true
read a
of-
lot more.
that's true of Don's too.
Yeah, but
Still.
that's all
Or
staff.
close
But I mean, but they're
proximity.
truly, and they're riding in trucks together where they're confined. They're in, that's why they're called crews. They have crews and they work together as a group. So that may be the reason that they've been included in some of these.
I have this article that Rusty handed me, but I have the same article in my office, and there was a representative out of Tyler, Texas, I believe his last name is Schaefer, and he, I guess, constituents maybe contacted him about this hazard pay, and I didn't know anything about it, I don't believe, but somebody high up at TxDOT confirmed that they had been paying this hazard pay since March 15th. it totaled around $8 million is what they're assessed.
I would be willing to bet you it had a lot less to do with TxDOT road and bridge crews than the TxDOT administrative.
May have,
Yeah, they found that money for it.
And I give this to them, trustee.
So,
So, like I said, mine was more than FYI to you and a half. So.
Give it to Jody and she'll make copies for us.
I will
Thanks,
say
Kelly.
even some of our large stores here, you know, name exactly which one, but I think we buy a lot of lumber and different things like that from them. One is paying their employees $2 extra for as pay, and they give them 3 bonuses so far on top of that. $300 one time, $150 two different times. The reason I know that is I have another employee that works part-time there. They've been getting all that extra just for being in that store. So, I appreciate the support, that, you know, that other departments, but, of course, my concern on this, and I know they do try and stand up for all the employees of this county. But right now, I can't see anybody that's put out as far out front, which is your law enforcement and jail staff.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, all this has still been under department budgets. Anything else on department?
Everybody
budgets?
else, I just want to say, I don't think we can really put anybody's staff, and I think y'all know it, above Rusty's for what they're doing, and I think it makes good sense. I think the simplest way, go back and look in March, when they started defining what essential workers were, and you'd be surprised how many essential workers fit under one of those categories with county employment. So, and Rusty, I'm not trying to compare my staff to yours, because y'all are out there on the front lines, but not who they're exposed to, what they do, but I think a great look at what FEMA says essential workers were, and you could probably find most of the courthouse being deemed essential to continue operations and stuff.
I would expect that would be tied to the hazard pay guideline, one would think, but it's a really good point.
And I would say, you know, I think y'all know it, the entire county has stepped up in this, regardless where they're working or what they're doing.
No doubt.
They're deserving.
Okay. What else we got, James?
Well, as you know, this is our final budget workshop before the adoption on September 14th, so, 2 items I have open. This is, the 2,000 requested from the district clerk for overtime. Can you get a yes or no on that?
Can that be taken out of another, like contingency or something on an as-needed basis? Or does it have to be budgeted?
We do have a payroll contingency. The purpose of that is for different things, but it's possible.
I don't mind doing it that way, but I think it needs to be, the big unknown there is what the courts do and when they're gonna do something.
Right.
And how they start opening up. If they're doing it at the point, I think it needs to go to the lump sum to the district clerk, not so that she has flexibility to work with her staff, but not do it piecemeal. It needs to be like $10,000 at one point. And if the courts are opened up full and they're going longer hours, and if that money, as long as that money's in the budget right now, it's fine.
Well, what other courts fall under that also? Municipal court? I meant the county court of law?
216, 498, CPS, family courts, AG courts.
Oh, all of that, okay.
So, you know, they're gonna be fighting for courtroom time.
Yeah.
You know, they'll still do a lot on Zoom, I assume the AG will. But trials, we don't have a choice. If they're going to trial, it could be a week long, it could be 2 weeks long. We already have one scheduled for Bernie that we're gonna have to pay for. And I'm hoping that doesn't bankrupt my budget, but, see how that works.
Well, how did you arrive at the figure, Don?
1,000 per employee.
I can always say, hey, I can always say half, give me half. If I run out, I'm gonna have to.
No, I'm just wondering what you did to determine that it was $10,000.
I just took
Which is why I'm saying, we don't know how much it's gonna be. It could be more, it could be
Maybe
less.
20,000.
Maybe 20, yeah. So that's why I'm thinking it ought to.
If it goes over, I just need to have means to get it. But I have a feeling we've already got like a 3-page trial docket. So they're gonna move them because they want to get these through and Rusty wants to get them out of jail.
I think it's a good idea to put in a contingency and make sure that there's enough in there so when Dawn needs it, then she can,
So do
could
I
be a
have to come to
source.
the court every time or just?
As we're saying, do a lump sum at one time. Yeah, I mean, depending on what they do with the Office of Court Administration, I think the one that making these decisions, they may not even start until next April. I mean, who
It
knows?
just sits there.
So it just sits there in a contingency, but once it starts going, if it is needed, do a lump sum transfer, but then you, with a basis then for what you need.
right.
And it's just
There'd be a basis
maybe
somewhere.
5,000, maybe 20,000.
So it'd be- at least be a basis though. You said the right word.
And what's in contingency right now?
Annual contingency, I want to say it's 110.
110?
So make it 125.
125 is what I think.
You know, Rusty may be in the same boat because he has to have people up there as well.
Well, the difference we have, and James and I talked to this, you know, my overtime budgets for both are never enough. Especially since my guys, we don't get the holidays off like here, and that comes out of overtime. But where it does get made up, and we try to do it, I can't budget for overtime in the full amount.
Right.
I think the sheriff's office, I got 75,000, and then this year's probably about 120. Okay. But where it's made up, where I had the option of making it up, where Dawn doesn't, is with 116 employees, I've only got openings somewhere. And so when it gets closer to the end of the budget year, the auditor's office is having to make budget amendments coming out of salary line item and putting it in overtime line item. And that's what helps keep us more of a zero deficit, because you just don't know. But she doesn't have the number of employees that she's going to only have, an opening that she can draw from.
This is kind of a new thing for your office. So you were trying to anticipate what it might.
I always do comp time, but I can't right now afford to have anybody off. So, you know, I have employees in there that have been there for a while, so I'm having them to take off now because if they don't, they're gonna lose their vacation.
Mhm.
So I don't wanna be in that situation because I have to have a body. You know, I can do 100% of it, but, you know.
So make
you're here
contingency,
24/7.
make contingency 125 rather than 110.
So increase the
Suggestion.
annual contingency 15,000.
Yeah.
And that is something that may need to be brought up before the end of the budget discussions, is because we've had some, and y'all know I've had some employees that have been out for 6 months, and that's going that cut it short. The other ones that have not been able to take time off. And with the county's vacation policy, you've got 20 years, you get 4 weeks vacation. You got a policy that you can't carry more than 160 hours at the end of the budget year. And I've got some that it's getting hard for them to be able to earn that 160. So I hate for employees that are going through this and trying to help fill in, vacancies to lose their vacation hours because of it. So if that happens, I'm probably gonna have to come and ask for a waiver on that 160 until we get it bumped back down. Because just to draw it in that October 1, I may not be able to get it on.
Didn't we, last year, I know you weren't here, Jamie, but I think you were last year, hadn't we accrued a fair amount of overtime, and we paid it all off as a lump sum?
That's correct.
We did.
Yeah. Comp time.
Comp time, I mean.
And we're not building the comp time, y'all are paying that as overtime now, we're not building it. But it's this vacation, that it's hard to get them to learn that in some cases. Okay.
I have the same problem. I have somebody who has over 300 hours today.
And you just can't earn it between now and October.
And it's still going to be
You're short.
And I'm experiencing the same thing with some of my more tenured staff, and the amount of comp time they're accruing just from the elections department. I think everybody can understand who that might be, but they're accruing masses and amount of comp time because of the election's running different and everything, and I only see that to continue to accrue. And this one employee can't even find the time to take off because we're gonna be short-staffed.
We're,
That's part of the reason you have a payroll contingency is for drivers.
But I'm talking on the vacation side. I agree with him, there may need to be some type of exceptions made, and maybe during this budget year, because they're gonna lose some hours.
And 95% of my employees will get that burn off. It's just been a couple of departments like CID where we had come out for so long, and I'd have an opening in there. When I had actually doing supervisory work, when he's getting promoted at the end of this month because of the one retiring. But he's been doing that position since February without any compensation, and he hadn't been able to get off. So he hasn't been able to earn his vacation, to get that vacation time down to 160. So it won't be a lot of hours, because you do let them have 160 as of September 30th. It's just they can't have over that. So it may be something, Jonathan, about this contingency, that if that employee can't burn it off, and he's got 20 hours over it, you know, I don't know if y'all want to give me time to let him burn it off, or if the county wants to consider, you know, paying that 20 hours, we're gonna try and get it off. You know, we gotta be careful, otherwise they won't burn it because they've got to get the paycheck for it. You know, I understand both ways, but there's going to be some issues in there that I don't think some of these employees, because of the way things are going, should lose their vacation time because they haven't been given an opportunity to burn it off at administration.
I think it's that we just need to be careful we don't.
Right.
I would rather try to pay it off if they can't do it rather than start accruing additional liabilities.
Right.
The last time I had was the merit discussion. Is there any funding or consideration of that?
I mean, I think that, my understanding was that, I thought it didn't go real well last time. That's kind of the impression. I wasn't that directly involved with it. I wasn't on the committee, but tried it with the idea of that being a policy, I think. But I heard a lot of complaints, and I don't know that there was a uniform policy on how it was implemented.
It was kind of rough.
It was, and if it's going to be considered, I think that we're going to, as a court, we're going to have to step up and be the one to make these decisions. As unpleasant as it is, uncomfortable as it may be, you're going to have to do it. I think it's going to fall to us to do it.
Yeah, but the question is, do we put something in the budget for that?
Right.
That's the question.
Well, because something didn't work once, typically you learn what was wrong with it and you come back and do it right.
Tweak it,
So
whatever.
I wouldn't necessarily bail out of it because it was kind of hard to
I'd say put it in the budget, and then let's make sure we've got a good policy. We don't have to implement it, we don't have to spend it
Right.
if we don't.
If we can't come up with a better plan.
Yeah, right, precisely.
But whatever you do, I want to make sure it's a gross number. I don't want to do like we did last year.
Right, yeah, gross. Total, not to exceed,
Including the roll-up,
Absolutely.
including roll-ups.
Including roll-ups.
not to exceed.
So if the court decides to do 50,000, which was the intention for last year, approximately 21, 22% of that would be roll-ups, so 40,000.
Good.
Is that good?
Okay.
I'll make those two changes. Is there any other areas of discussion you want to have?
You have a question on the overtime money, so if I do need overtime, I have my staff put it in, and then the budget amendment goes through James, or do I have to come back to the court and say, hey, I have $5,000?
That goes through their office.
Yeah, just give us a heads up, so we can have the budget adjustment prior.
Sure.
Okay.
And that could give us a heads up, even, we'll probably hear when the court's open again, but if you probably will have some prior knowledge of that, so you can call us and let us know. We can go.
I mean, I think my preference would be to have, once it's opened up and you get a feel for how it's going, and then come and maybe once or twice you get a lump sum, so
Yeah.
that it's not doing, I don't want to do it every payroll.
Right.
I think it's like, but we just don't know, and you don't know really how it's gonna work, so if you need,
I just want y'all to be aware of it,
Yeah.
because I don't want to wind up in the same situation like we were in comp time going through the road, and then they're sitting there, and I can't give them off.
I think this way will be better, because if it goes over the amount you requested, then there's no change, nothing has to happen.
And you're bringing it to our attention today helps a lot, you know, because you know what's ahead or have an idea what's coming.
Matter of time.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, do we have anything else on our workshop today?
Well, the agenda called for several items, but those just to allow us discussion for them, not necessarily anything in particular for each one.
I think we've heard everything on the tax rate, haven't we, Bob?
That's all I have as a question.
No, that's good.
Well, I have one question. On the 4757 is, I wrote it down, didn't write down, that's the basic tax rate.
That's the no new revenue.
That's the no new revenue.
That's
Okay.
correct. You
And the-
recall a couple of weeks ago in a workshop, I gave you the examples of your house, my house.
Right.
That's what that rate is.
And then the 4459 was,
That was a general fund rate.
that's a general fund, okay. That's all.
Okay, anything else, James? I want to make sure everybody is aware that this will be on the agenda Monday. And what we will be doing is adopting this as a proposed budget. The final budget will not be voted on until September the 14th, which time we'll vote on the tax rate also. All of that will be September 14th.
Actually, you will need to
What we got?
vote, and I have the items with Jody. You will need to vote on the proposed rate by record vote on Monday.
Right.
That will be published in the paper of who voted which way. In the past, it's been required to have 2 public hearings. Well, actually, this year we wouldn't, because we're not exceeding that rate. We have to have 1 public hearing, but you can have that public hearing and adopt at the same meeting,
Right.
So we'll do that September 14th.
September 14th.
I think that's what's on our schedule.
That will give me ample time to publish in the newspapers, place it on the website, all of the new statutory requirements for the Senate Bill 2. But we'll actually, 3 items on the agenda regarding this will be to propose the rate, and that'll be a record vote. Set the time, which you've already said, September 14th. And then that'll be the time for the hearing, and then the same time to adopt the rate. And then there'll be 3 other similar agenda items for Lake Ingram, the State Road District.
Good. Now, for those of you that are watching us on YouTube and you've never seen a record vote, that's where we all, each one of us individually vote. And you get to see government in action. Anything else today? There being no further business, we are adjourned.